Simple questions for 100 people. Welcome to the experiment. I'm Bill Carell, and this is my investigation. My research project to gather data from 100 beautiful human beings for the sole purpose just to see what happens actually across the interviews. Now, the questions are fixed and all the interviews will remain consistent, and the variable will be the actual participants themselves and their answers. So, Mark, it's as if I'm having you come sit on my porch to share your thoughts so I can learn about people. We're looking forward to what we're going to learn when we're done, and very interested in the people in the process and in your particular story. So we'll get to know our guest here a little bit through the interview. So let's dive in. What is your full name?
My name is Mark Allen Stuart.
Mark Allen Stuart. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I first and last given name Mark Stewart. I was in the music business. I still am in the music business for one of my pursuits. And if I add the word Allen in the middle of it, I'm much more Googleable. So that's why I've now gone the last 4 years to Mark Allen Stuart. It sounds so much more officious.
A marketing genius. I love it. Good for you. Self-promotion is horrible, but somebody's got to do it, right?
If we don't, who will?
Exactly. So, Mark, what's your favorite nickname that most people don't know?
Tiger. My dad, when I was very young, I was a really small, sickly, frail kid, and my dad called me Tiger. He was an industrial psychologist, so he was setting my inner compass and my inner mojo when I was a little kid. So because I was little and scrawny and frail, he called me Tiger, and I kind of grew into it. Yeah, so that's it. So I started as a frail, little, tiny, sickly kid. I ended up when I was playing football in college, I was 6'3", 270 pounds. So I kind of grew into that Tiger nomenclature. But I was a little kid, little scrawny kid when I was small, and Dad nicknamed me Tiger.
So can you say a little bit more about that relationship? Because obviously you transformed from like I don't know, what would you call it? Like a caterpillar into a butterfly.
Well, my dad was a pure artist in business. As I said, he was a business psychologist, and I loved him dearly. He passed when I was in school, so I grew up dreaming to be part of his company, and unfortunately didn't happen to have that opportunity. But he was my best friend growing up. I wasn't a horribly social kid. I spent a lot of time with my family. My dad was he had a congenital heart disease, so he was sick a bunch, and so he and I just spent a lot of time together, and we were just absolute besties. And so he could call me Tiger, he could call me Lily, he could call me whatever he wanted. But I just cherish those times together, and not a day goes by that I don't think about the positive impact he made on my life.
That's really great. Now, did you have a kind of a pet name for him, or was it just Dad?
Dad. That was it. I think he had a first name. I think it was Kent, but it was Dad. Dad was like the Holy Grail term.
There you go. So interesting start to life, and quite a trip along the way. But when did you first notice what color your hair was?
It's fun. I referenced that I went to college at Rice, played football there, and if you want a date, I can't give you an exact date, but August 1980. I was a freshman in college, and for football team had to fill out a media guide questionnaire. And one of the questions, they had the height and weight because of the physical exam. One of the questions was hair color. So That's my recollection of the first time I realized, indeed, I do have colored hair.
Before that, you really didn't give a good rap, did you?
Never thought about it. But that questionnaire made me introspective about my follicles.
Well, it obviously made an impact in your memory, as you can go right back to that month in 1980.
I remember because we're in August, September now, just came out of August, and every year that time, it's just every one of those years. I played football in Houston, Texas, outdoors on AstroTurf in 110-degree weather. There's a lot of that experience that has been literally burned into my mind, and I just remember those press days. We had basically a a day off of practice when we had the media day and press day and so forth. And it was just a great respite. And so there were a lot of rich, fun memories about that day that we didn't try to knock each other's heads off.
Good for you. I'm going to stay on this thread for a minute. You're kind of a blessed guy. Now, out of 300 and some odd universities, Division I, playing football, you had an extremely great underclass for quarterbacks all across the United States. 83 would give us some of the best quarterbacks we've ever seen in the game.
Without question. And so I Rice, which was the smallest Division I college at the time, part of the Southwest Conference. So we had 4,000 undergraduate kids, smallest D1 school. And we were in our conference was University of Texas, SMU, which back then the SMU was the team,
Yes.
and Eric Dickerson, Craig James that we played against. So we played all of these mammoth schools, but they really gave us a break for the two preseason games because we only had to play LSU and Oklahoma for preseason.
Right. Those are good tune-ups. I mean, their fans eat their meat without cooking it. I'm telling you.
Without question.
There's no doubt about it. I mean, when you do barbecue in Texas, it's either cooked for 20 hours or it's one and done, you know?
That's it. You're right.
Yeah, what a great place to have spent your college career. So, you know, you've got all this under your belt and now you're a few weeks older. What would you say is your favorite thing to do to intentionally waste time?
You know, I'm a realist, but I'm also an optimist. I own 3 companies and I'm on 2 boards, so I really try to maximize my time. But I'm a big believer in entertainment, and one of my companies is an entertainment company. And so if it's non-business or non-family related, I love to break away and play video games. I'm a video gamer. Probably, as you said, a couple of weeks in the north part of the average age group for video game players. But I kind of grew up in the video game industry and early on in Sega and Nintendo days, and to this day, every day I squeak out a little time to relax the left and right side of my brains and play video games.
Do you play any of the classics, or are you playing more modern stuff now?
All modern. I let's just say that I've killed myself some zombies over the last couple of years.
I like that. And then there's always Fortnite and Minecraft and some of the other ones. My grandsons, who are 11 and 13, the younger one, when he was 8 years old, was competing at a national level for a little while. Yeah, I mean, it really had nothing to do with how old you were in order to be a really good video game player. You know?
Right, no doubt. You just have that commitment, drive, and focus.
Yeah, for sure. So that's a really good thing to do to intentionally waste time. And do you feel like that gives you a competitive edge?
I do, because it's such a divergence from the other things I do during the day. It has nothing to do with it. I literally am assembling weaponry and saving the planet by killing zombies. That's very distinct from the consulting world that I have, or the music and film world that I have. So because I really can recharge and relax and separate from the day-to-day activities of my traditional business by playing video game, really detaching, really recharging, and enjoying it. I have a lot of fun with it. It doesn't. That's why I say I'm an optimist and a realist. Because it really doesn't benefit me in any other way other than I have fun, and fun is a good thing.
And the neat part of it is when people want to talk about being mindful, you're 170% mindful in the middle of a battle, you know?
Exactly right. I got to save the world, Bill. I'm not fooling around here.
Yeah, we were talking about that. Somebody has to, right? So, Mark, this is fascinating. What's your favorite movie to watch alone?
I referenced my dad. Growing up, 2 movies. We went to 2 movies on Saturday and 1 movie Sunday afternoon. My whole life. I love movies. That's why I ended up. John Carpenter's second film. He had a film called Dark Star, which was actually, it was a college project, but it was traditionally released. But his second film, his first independent film, was called Assault on Precinct 13 that he did in 1976. And
Yes.
it was made 2 years before Halloween. And it's this incredible. The third floor of our house is half of it is my office, the other half is my man cave with the TV and so forth. And I go in there by myself. I watch Assault on Precinct 13. It's this. Are you familiar with the film?
I believe I am. I'm remembering some young actors that became really big after that. Is that
So it's basically an anti-hero hero Western cowboy shoot 'em up set in urban Los Angeles circa 1976. And there
complete
were
time,
two,
right?
oh my God. And it was, super low budget, but pure John Carpenter. John Carpenter did the music, and people know him as a great director, but he and Deborah Hill, his partner, unbelievable musicians. But there was two unbelievable character actors that were actually had starring roles. A guy by the name of Austin Stoker, who played the police lieutenant, but this unbelievable unsung hero of an actor called Darwin Jostin, who played the anti-hero hero Napoleon Wilson.
Oh
And
my
just
God.
that name, and it's such a quirky, interesting story. But this anti-hero hero Napoleon Wilson is just, he looked a little bit like Robert Blake, the actor
Yep.
did. And it's just a great, like I said, it's a Western that could have been played in the 1880s, but John Carpenter decided to film it in urban contemporary 1976. It's just a really gritty, fun movie that I love watching by myself. I've probably, Bill, seen it 100 times.
I can tell that you've lost your passion. There's no doubt about
I love the film. I watched it 3 days ago.
that. When I was writing these questions, I knew I'd be interviewing you someday. There's no. Thank you for sharing all that. I now have something on my to-do list. I've got to go and see if I ever did see this movie.
It's interesting because they remade it with Ethan Hawke in 2010, I believe. I would never watch that remake. I've watched other remakes. I've watched, John Carpenter did The Thing, and then there was a remake of The Thing. I've watched that. But Assault on Precinct 13, I've just said to myself, it can't be any better. It could be different. It's not. I'm not going to my one man cave movie. I'm not going to mess around with it.
I completely agree with you. There are some things that are sacrilegious to do, and to overprint a classic that should never have been remade. That's showing some chutzpah these days, because everything's done again.
It's interesting because I just read on one of my feeds 2 days ago or yesterday, kind of the list of great 70s movies you've never heard of. And there's my Assault on Precinct 13. And it's all over the place. It's on Tubi, it's on Netflix, it's on Prime. So you'll be able to access it. But do yourself an hour and 26-minute favor and rewatch the movie, because it's a ton of fun.
I will do so. And I will let you know about it.
Please.
Yeah. So now we can move into the meat and potatoes of this interview. If you were to have an action figure made of you, what superpower would it have, and what colors would its uniform be?
Superpower, definitely telekinesis, without question. My dad got his thesis at Stanford, parapsychology and telekinesis. Now, he never made something move with his mind, but
Right.
he got it. But the approach and the theorems that he crafted to do the research is what got the doctorate. But I always thought that was the coolest superpower, is tapping the part of the mind. What do we hear? We only use 2% or whatever the small percentage is. So I'm thinking, well, if you tap into that other 98%, you got to move stuff, and that would be really cool, because the power and strength of emotion and when it becomes a physicality,
Yep.
makes sense that you're able to move stuff.
Yep.
So that my superpower, telekinesis, no question. Colors would be silver and black. Now, not black and silver like Venom or like
Right.
the Punisher, but silver with highlights of black.
There you go. Not the Raiders. Yeah.
Right, exactly.
I got you. The opposite of that. Would you have a cape?
A fabulous question. I'm going capeless, Bill.
A gutsy move, but I like it.
I'm going capeless. It's just going to get in the way of all that telekinesis. So I'm passing.
All right, so now you've got this marvelous uniform. You're going to have a mask or anything, or are you just going to be like everybody will know who you are?
It's going to be like a Lone Ranger type mask.
Okay.
They'll, if they know you, they'll figure it out. It's you, but still you have it because it's a really great accent.
I don't believe that the people in the 1950s believed that the people in the 1880s were that stupid, you know?
Right, exactly.
All right, so now you've got this tool. What are you going to do for it? Or what are you going
What
to
do you
do
mean?
with what are you going to do with it?
Oh, well, first of all, I'm going to go on all of the late night talk shows and prove the amazing Randy wrong that no, you actually can move things with your mind. Because if you remember him, he was always thwarting Uri Geller and all of those other guys. So definitely make the talk show circuit. But then I think that I would try to utilize it in some form of medicine or medical procedure to execute medical procedures in a bloodless, cutless way that would
Wow.
dramatically help and improve the health of an individual without the evasiveness of tearing into the human body.
Oh,
Then,
yeah.
once that's cracked, I'd proffer it and teach it to every physician on the planet.
I like that. You know,
And I could do that because I could do it because I have telekinesis, so I can project it into their minds.
absolutely. There's probably nothing you couldn't do. You know, we're approaching 8 billion, and you'd have to take a few at a time, I think.
Maybe, but still, there's a lot of brain cells up there. We can knock it out two at a time.
There you go. All right. So now, what did you want to do and grow up to be when you were 5 years old?
You know, a lot of kids love dinosaurs. And I originally liked dinosaurs, but what I liked were the people studying dinosaurs. I thought superheroes were the archaeologists.
Oh yeah.
And there was this archaeologist, he died, I believe, in 1974, 72 or 74, but his name was Louis Leakey. And Louis Leakey, and his claim to archaeological fame was a great archaeological digs in the Odawa Gorge in Africa,
Yep.
and some of the earliest humanoids that did he access. He wasn't a rock star. He wasn't Indiana Jones, but you remember the TV show Nova that would showcase
Yep.
scientists and
I
so forth.
remember it well. Yes.
Yeah, and he was on what the first year of Nova was 1974, and he must have passed in 72. Nova was in 74, and he was one of the very first exposés that they did, and he spoke with this great cross between a British and South African accent, and he did look the part. He had gray hair and the tunic outfit, and his wife was his partner, and they were always on digs together, but the commitment and depth and seriousness of his communication style and pathway about what he was doing and why it was important. And he wasn't like a cheerleader rah rah, but the intensity, again, reinforcing how important the work he was doing was to us understanding ourselves today. I'm a 5-year-old kid sitting there watching this from 5 to probably 20, just really fascinated by the idea of and the concept of learning about ourselves today by learning about our history before today.
Yeah, and I guess once you start scratching the surface on that, the more you start to know, the more you realize you don't know. And when you ignite that passion, you've got a lifetime, hobby. You've got a lifetime endeavor, and maybe a career. Who knows?
And that really defines who I am as a business person today, is that true commitment to continual improvement. I
Yep.
read, I research. I used to be the CEO of the collecting channel. I collect like 20 different categories. And I studied a lot about the collecting mentality of people who collect stuff. And I really have this commitment to myself to continue to learn, to get better, to get smarter, to help people. And populating our mind with information is just a great speedway to that.
Yeah. Completely agree with you. I think ongoing growth and development until you move on to the next level is always about getting a better question. It's always about setting aside what you think you know in favor of what you're about to take a chance on and learn. You know.
It's so funny that you say that, and I will torque it a bit to say that I think what I find, Bill, is that I respect people's answers to questions, but I've come to the point of being more intrigued by their questions
Yes.
rather than the answers of questions. And,
Yes.
and that within it, pursuit of knowledge and thought. And yeah, I'll walk, why I get excited, I'll walk out of this conversation with you and I'm going to be a better, smarter person because you've populated my mind with different points of view and vectors and perspectives that I didn't have before I had this call. And I wouldn't have if I didn't have this call.
It's a true story. And when we step back from life a little bit, um, and you start to realize that all growth comes from having a better question, then it has to be, who are you in conversation with? You've got to up your game with the folks that you're having conversation with, or you're not getting to the point of being stimulated to better questions.
Right. Absolutely. Well said.
So just, to kind of close off this question, what did you
Sure.
think of Jurassic Park?
I loved it. I loved it. I completely thought that they captured something completely new. I just when the lead archaeologist puts his hands on his knees as the Allosaurus walk by at the very beginning of the film. When Laura Dern had that affinity for the Triceratops that had eaten the wrong berries, and she had that intimate connection with the animal, and it took the deep sigh, and we all kind of felt all of that. I thought it was a fabulous film visually, story wise, great. But I thought the connectivity of the characters, their dimensionality. You had Jeff Goldblum, which was just, chaos, a chaotist. A chaos theory person, the blood sucking lawyer who was the only one that wanted to support Attenborough. It was just, I loved it, and I love, obviously envious because I wish I could go to Jurassic Park this afternoon because I would have missed this call. But I thought it was a fabulous, one of the best films of its type ever.
Yeah, the neat part of all of those first ofs is that you get this stuff that just blows your mind. And
Yes.
I think it was like 8.5 seconds long, looking down into the valley with all of the animals trooping across. I get goosebumps
Yeah.
now thinking about that.
Right.
That had never been able to be done before. It cost them millions of dollars and months worth of rendering time, you know,
Sure.
to make that happen. And I mean, that's the way I remember the story. It's kind of like the Matrix, where they introduced the new camera in order to get those
Right.
stop actions as all the way around the actors, and
Right.
just what are that kind of thinking is just out of this world. It's a wonderful thing to at least behold and then to appreciate.
And it is stark to for the realization of how much Industrial Light and Magic does of
Yes,
all special effects today, and not just for CBS, but and CBS owned theatrical properties, but for everybody. And they did the Wolverine, Deadpool special effects. They did Jurassic Park. They really have, and they employ thousands of people. Interestingly, you go through the end credits waiting for the Easter egg in a Marvel film, and you see thousands of digital artists because, as you say, some of it is, and with AI, we're getting faster and quicker at being able to produce that. But the reality of it is, to have that artistry and that beautiful visual eye appeal, you got it takes time because it isn't just digital rendering. It really is art in digital production.
yeah, I agree with you. It takes the thinking to conceive the outcomes of what you're being, what's being generated in CGI, and be able to tell AI that this is what I'm looking for, and then
Right.
produce it enough times to
Replicate it.
get the one that you choose.
Right.
Pretty cool. Not a
That is.
bad time to be alive, right?
No doubt. Absolutely. Eye candy is good.
So, Mark, what would you say your greatest accomplishment is?
I would not say my daughter because she is an individual and she's done it herself, and her and her mom. I think the realization that I'm as comfortable with the two things that I'm good at in business as I am comfortable with the 99,000 things I'm cruddy at in business.
Yeah. That's healthy and adult.
Well,
That's
something had
very
to be
grown up sounding. Yes.
something had to be adult in my life.
Yeah. Good for you. So what has that translated into for you? You know, being good at those two things, being totally satisfied that those are the two good things that you're good at. And it gives you a chance to, you know, like maybe play in the other areas and be a failure at it, and it doesn't take any power from you.
Oh, what I the one of the greatest blessings I have in at this point in my career is that I'm a strategist. That's what I do. And so I take really complex situations, I simplify them, I normalize them, and I optimize them. That's it. And that is one of the two strengths that I have. The other strength is out of years of discipline of being a consultant, my number one, and a realization within the realization is any consultant's number one value to their client is objectivity.
Yep.
But every second you're with your client, you lose by definition objectivity. And if there comes a time where you cross that line and you've lost objectivity, you either need to join that company full time or stop being a consultant, because you've lost the number one value you bring them, which is objectivity.
Yep.
So the two strengths, objectivity and strategy, allows me to focus on those two things, and surround myself with people that are infinitely better at the other components of business execution and operations, and surround myself with people that I used to do them and I wasn't very good at it and I didn't like it.
Right.
And now I have the comfort to say, here's my two lanes, and everything else, I'm just going to surround myself with really smart, wonderful, beautiful people that thrive at it, that do it well. Here's my lane, and I'm super comfortable with the rest.
I think that's a great way to go. And as a matter of fact, it's more cost effective. There's a lot less lost energy, and people just have more fun, really.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and because of that, what I found out within myself is the minute I made that realization, and then that realization converted into a commitment,
Yeah.
then it turned into a regimen. It turned into a routine, and therefore I reduced my waste and chaos of time and focus on doing things that I wasn't very good at, and I was trying for whatever reason, and inwardly focused that to those two pillars, and it allowed those two pillars to become stronger because of that focus.
Yeah. It's your PowerPoint, and it's no doubt what you're known for.
That's it.
So now that you've got all of this that you're leaning on very comfortably, who's your favorite person to listen to?
From a voice tonality standpoint, which I know isn't your question, Vincent Price. I love the fact that Vincent Price was born and grew up in St. Louis and had a British accent his whole life, and nobody ever said anything about it. But I don't always agree with him, maybe 50% of the time, but I love the way Elon Musk stirs things up. And
Yes.
he's a very eloquent and thoughtful speaker. So, what is communication? Two things: content delivery, what we say and how we say it. So he has good delivery, but the content and the scope of the topics that he's talking about, some trivial but important, some macro socioeconomic and dramatically important, but he's not afraid to stir things up at an unbelievably high level. And yeah, being the richest guy on the planet helps, but that's not that's not what empowers him. What empowers him is an inner strength and comfort. And so, I really like to listen to Elon Musk, what he says, and he always, best part of his communication style is he always delivers an opinion with rationale, not just opinion.
Yeah.
Everybody has an opinion, but the rationale opens up the mind to have a greater level of understanding, maybe not acceptance, but of understanding, because understand the causal factors.
Yeah. I agree with you. I think he brings an engineer's design discipline to constructing a sentence out of thin air. You can actually see him forming the words, above his head like
Right.
an outline. And I had a college professor, and then there was the CEO of a company that I worked for when I was very young, back in my 20s and early 30s. And they did the exact same thing. They would create the sentence in a language that was listenable and understandable by every last person in the room, and they made sure they were leaving no one behind and no one was getting bored. And I think he's a master at doing that sort of thing, plus coming up with really kind of disruptive and innovative ideas on the fly. He just
Right.
seems to like generate that for a guy who doesn't sleep very often, let alone
Right.
very much. It's remarkable to me, and he always performs at an extremely high level, and
Right.
he never backs down. You
Right.
know,
But
he
but
will change his mind, but he never backs down.
and he goes on Joe Rogan and he goes to the World Cup
Yeah,
and he's a regular person. He just happens to get there on a private plane, but it's not like he's cloistered in an ivory tower anywhere. He lives life.
yeah, I agree with you, Mark. And I've said for a dozen years or so, without referencing Elon, but with other people, I've said, I just dare you to tell me that people that are on the spectrum are handicapped. They are
Right.
not. Okay,
Right.
they're dealing at a different frequency than you and I are, and I'll tell you what, they're going to find our frequency before we find theirs. And when they do, get out of the way, because
Right.
it's an amazing thing to watch.
Without question.
Yeah, so I share obviously your passion in several of these different areas, and even the silver and black. But so complete this sentence for me, if you will.
Okay.
When I grow up, I'd like to.
I would like to never forget the whimsy and wonder of being a kid. The fantasy, the make believe, the true essence of uninhibited creation, which hopefully will continue to drive bewilderment and innovation throughout our life. But never forget that wonder and whimsy of make believe and make up.
I love it. I'm going to translate back to you for a moment. What
Sure.
I'm hearing is the childlike innate curiosity that never regards something that's not working as a problem. They always look at it as something, to get better at, and something to kind of understand, and something to try, and walk away with more than they started with every single time they fail, until we tell them that failing is a bad idea.
Yeah, your paraphrase definitely is in the right direction and vector. You used a term I thought maybe about design. I thought you were going to say design thinking. I don't know what happened to design thinking. It is the smartest business approach on the planet. We
Yeah,
kind of lost our way with it during the pandemic because we lost our way up with everything on the pandemic. But I truly believe that adopting a design thinking mentality, the concept and construct of failure doesn't exist because it
right.
truly is continual improvement, growth, and evolution, bringing insight and intelligence into the infrastructure of creation, adapting, evolving, growing, learning, and expanding. And that's really the way that I operate our business structure on all the companies.
I like that. And having come up through manufacturing when we were, getting, our statistical quality control brought back to us from the Japanese after they transformed their country 10 years ahead of us. When we started learning about Kanban and, better this time than last kind of a philosophy where you're always looking for some kind of a marginal improvement. Um, the design thinking was planted out ahead of time so you at least know when to stop, you know?
Right,
What
right.
if you keep going and you don't know that you've hit a failure point, and every energy that you're going to put into the thing from here on is just wasted time? You have to have these, time fences and gates that you go through in order to say, did we accomplish what we thought we were going to? Did we learn anything from that? Now what can we do in the next step, sort of a thing. And that way, you're being responsible
Right.
and accountable.
No, without it's so funny you put a smile on my face because, and I found it interesting that part of your question isn't what you do or what your career's been or what because it's really academic, and I understand that's not part of the study. But I do have to tell you that I started my career at Procter and Gamble, and I was there as a child of Deming and Total Quality,
There you
and
go.
as a global initiative, and we were all impacted by TQM and total quality manufacturing and total quality is a mindset. And again, not unlike design thinking that lost its way to what to whatever. Unbelievably important foundation points that I use every single day of my life.
Yeah. I was fortunate enough to work with a man named Paul Krensky, who was one of Deming's disciples over in Japan and came back and brought, the whole statistical
Right,
quality control.
right.
He worked with the man, I don't remember who wrote it, that quality is free. It's been such a long time since I read that book, going back into the 1970s or early 80s. But the whole idea of if you can measure it and you can see it, then you can produce, an improvement to the system. If you don't, you're pretty much screwed, and it's luck of the draw.
You can't have improvement without measurement, and that's one of those unbelievably simple idioms that need to be a commitment, a movement within an organization. But it's just simple and smart.
Yep.
It's just really simple. And I'll tell you, Bill. Hopefully, I'll put another smile on your face. When I was at P&G, I was a part of a group that worked on brand, but also organizational development things within the company. And I got to spend a lot of time with Stephen Covey, who was the shortest, most intense, in-your-face human I've ever met in my life. I I I don't read sales or marketing or motivation books, and there's a reason behind that. But I did read Seven Habits of Highly Successful People, and it is brilliant, and it's brilliant today, and it's as relevant today as the Old Testament's relevant today. But I did have an opportunity to spend a good deal of time with him, and he was a hoot. It was something.
I am envious of you. I've studied Covey for, I mean, the better part of 30 years. I don't remember what year in the 90s that Seven Habits came out, but I thought to myself, this is so freaking simple.
Right,
It,
right,
it takes somebody who's really awake and thinking to write this stuff down. And I think the most powerful thing beyond, begin with the end in mind, and listen first to understand and then to be understood, that's cool stuff. But the four quadrant philosophy, being
right.
able to take something and ask questions about it and place it in one of four quadrants, so you can say this quadrant's a throwaway, we do nothing in that quadrant at all if it's in there. If it pops up in one of the other quadrants later on, we'll take a look at it. I shamelessly stole those ideas and I used it in my businesses, and I also used it when I was consulting with people.
I mean, it was published originally in '89, and I think the fifth of the seven is the most profound. And you're right. I mean, you have to step back. You have to be uncluttered, but seek to understand before you're understood.
Yep.
So simple and so effective. Hard to discipline yourself to that point, but so smart, so super smart. And as I said, what's not relevant in 2025? Be proactive. Begin
Yep.
with the end in mind. Put first things first.
Yep.
Work together. I think he. I don't know whether he created the term synergize, but he used the verb synergize. Just those 7 points, um, just really cornerstones of not just business, but how to manage yourself as you interact with people in a business environment.
I agree with you, and I think it was like the on ramp to having conversations in which there didn't need to be winners and losers in those days, because most people were speaking to make a point, and they didn't really care. They just wanted to fill the air with their thoughts when they had an opportunity to say things. And rarely was it about constructing something that was really good for the
Right.
group or good for the other people. But when you
Right.
decide, I'm going to listen to you fully, it costs me nothing. There's nothing for me to win or lose here. However, I could gain some understanding, and maybe we make a better world or a better factory or a better marriage.
Without question. I agree.
We could probably make up a whole bunch more questions here, but what would you say, Mark, is the most important thing in life to you right now?
Selfishly, I would say my family. I referenced earlier in our conversation. But if I take a little more holistic view, I think that what I'm troubled with and spend a lot of time thinking and talking to people about is that we as a country need to start uniting after so many years of division. And I have this theory that which gets politicized gets polarized, and that which gets polarized gets paralyzed. We don't get anything done. And we're making some unbelievable technological advancements, but from a societal standpoint, we're missing out on unbelievable opportunity that's present in front of us. And I think that we have to stop dividing, whether it's on a party, whatever that division is, and start uniting as people and uniting as a country and as a big old tribe, and really start slowing down and caring for that person that's across the street that you don't really know and you probably won't ever know, but understanding that they're humans and they should be cared for. And so I think that for me, that again, on that more holistic, less selfish standpoint, I think what's most important in life right now is for all of us to start thinking about uniting and caring.
I like that to a great degree. Have you got a methodology, or has anything kind of come up for you that sounds like it might be a good way forward for action steps and things that can be done to, bring that into being in our culture?
Yeah, yes. It's surfacing the topic. It's a very arresting topic. It's not offensive, but
Right.
when it's a very arresting topic. We're running so fast. COVID. I mean, I have this talk to do why I love COVID. Of course, COVID was the devil. I hate COVID, but it did progress and evolve us in some interesting ways.
Yes.
Before people were trying to go digital. If you didn't go digital during COVID, you didn't get anything done. There were change agents in companies as positions. Today, we can accommodate change better now than we've ever accommodated change. But just stopping the conversation, the topical conversation, and articulating the ideal, especially in the middle of it, either a heated conversation or a important conversation, whether it's a religious conversation, a political conversation, a sports conversation,
Yep.
and just talking about the concept of how precious it is that we have each other and that we need to unite rather than divide. Just surfacing the topic, I do it often, and I've never had anybody argue that that's not a good process. We just don't think about it enough because we've lost our way. Because that which gets politicized gets polarized, and that which gets polarized gets paralyzed. That's where we're at. I truly believe that, and everything, especially with the lockdowns and the things that happened societally for the lockdowns, everything became so divided and vicious that we really were. I fundamentally believe people are good. People are very, very good.
Yes.
Some can manage outside and internal stimulus better than others, but we all have the same capacity. You can't feel more happiness than I can. You do it in a different way. I can't feel more pain than you can. I feel it in a different way. But if you normalize it, it's all 100%. We're all equal, and regardless of race or color or creed or history or background or last name, regardless of that, that is a normalizing factor. And if that's our point of origin, which it is, you can't defute it. You can't turn your back on it. And if it is our point of origin, then it's a rationale for unity.
I love the most important thing in life for you right now, and I agree with you. And I'm your partner. And I also want you to know that there are people that have to be taught how to get interested in the conversation, possibly, to the point where they would listen. Uh,
Right.
Look at the way that we're constructing our human beings these days and what we're putting into their head and what we're allowing them to do to damage themselves. There's a lot of work to be done here. So it's easy, but it's simple, but it's not easy, right?
Right. And so you and I met through a mutual business and personal association through Eric.
Yep.
And Eric is part of a peer-to-peer community that I'm involved with. And Eric has often, and others within the organization, have heard me use terms that aren't normally associated with business. I talk about loving what you do and loving what you're committed to. And if you're an investor, loving what you're investing in.
Yes.
And I talk a lot about the idea that we have to unbridle the part that restricts us from evolution and growth by being open-minded and open-hearted. I talk about being a business evangelist, which is an arresting topic, but people seem to find it interesting. I'm also a business zealot. I mean, business is in part of that conform is part of our society that makes us click, and so I'm my favorite capitalist.
I like it. And I'll tell you what, these are fundamentals that we didn't get growing up in high school. These are fundamentals that we should. I think we should be teaching second and third graders about the value of competition, about the value of doing your best all the time. Just for today, do the best that you can just for today, and then let
Oh,
tomorrow take care of tomorrow. We'll do the best you can tomorrow if that's possible. But there's no reason in the world why you wouldn't go out there and challenge yourself to honor the fact that you're here by accident, or maybe
right.
you're here by design. But why don't you choose one of them and use that as a damn good reason to do the best you can in your life?
Yeah, I think it's our. I used a word earlier. I think it's our duty to do exactly what you just said. Yeah, I think
Yep.
it's our duty. We're given if you're given opportunity, it's your duty to use it, not to squander it. I live to that conviction.
So here we are. We've set the ideal. What would you like to leave in the world after your life is done?
Well, I have a couple legacy points which answer and facilitate your question kind of in a different way. And one of the companies that I have, we produce rock and roll music and science fiction film. And I take a big, you referenced what I do to waste time, and I said video games, and I love movies. I take entertainment really seriously, especially the music we produce and the films we produce, because because it is such entertainment is a critical part of balance. And so I hope that some of the music that I produce, the films I produce, will live forever in a digital world, and I hope people will continue to enjoy them and be entertained by them long after I'm gone. So that I have a physical legacy within the entertainment world that I have aspiration will continue to put smile on people's faces for a long time.
It's fantastic. It's I think you've done a great job of putting into words why people are in the entertainment industry. Many of them could not articulate it as well as you just did, but if you ask them, a lot of them just basically say, "What else would I do?" You know?
Right, right. Sure, absolutely. And I'm privileged to uh, pre-production, production, post-production people, artists, talent, musicians. I'm just surrounded by. I couldn't play a note. I can't hum a tune. I'm a business person that happens to have an entertainment company, and I manage it as a business person, not as an entertainment company. But I have I've had the privilege and been so honored by so much talent around me. And Bill, I'm a fanboy. Period. I'm a fanboy. I love consuming what we create. I love watching it, listening to it, and because of that, those legacy points, I hope I hope people will continue to entertain and put smiles on people's faces for a really long time.
Thank you very much. There's no doubt in my mind the people you're associated with who are here after you're gone are going to be saying, "What would Mark do?" Or I can hear Mark's voice in my head. There's no doubt in my mind that you make an imprint on some great people. So the baker's question, I like to go to the bakery because my particular baker, she is a fantastic gal. If I buy a dozen of anything, she always gives me a free one. I think this was something they brought over from the old country, right?
Right, right.
So your baker's question is, what is the thing that most people misunderstand about you?
Well, I'll answer it from the. As I said, I'm a strategist. I'm a consultant, and I think that as a consultant, I try to maintain objectivity, especially as I'm consulting a company. And the way that that objectivity surfaces itself is, and I think that where people misunderstand is the idea that my client is not the CEO or a C suite member. My client is the overall good of the company. And when someone brings me in, they're the ones that signed the check. They're the ones that approved and created the gateway. They often have that sense of ownership and connection. And I definitely try to build meaningful business relationships. But at the end of the day, as a consultant, I'm not serving an individual or group of individuals, my focus and fairness is on the good of the company. And sometimes folks don't like that because we like preferential treatment. But my and I found that if I live to that, not only can I honor, respect, and perform for my clients, but I can also put my head on a pillow and sleep at night.
I appreciate that. And you kind of sparked some thoughts in my mind. Do you ever find yourself working across the table from people who are asking you to go out and fix their 3,500 employees?
Yes.
And what's your response to that?
So yeah, I happen to really respect, and this is, this has been a very interesting conversation. We've reflected and talked about some really important organizational development ideas over the last 30 years. Chain of command is something that, at one point the structure and rigor of chain of command worked. Then the world wanted a flat organization because everyone would avoid. I happen when you're trying to disseminate from an organizational development standpoint, when you're trying to effect positive change, when you're trying to create cultural movement, when you're trying to redirect the focus of the energy of the company outwardly to an inward focus, you need that to be a systemic, enterprise-wide event and,
Yep.
and a movement, if you will. So the only way to manage that isn't to have the cheerleader CEO or the cheerleader chief HR. It's got to work through the organization, through the organizational structure. And so, and the way that I build that into the program is I don't have team an internal panel of just the senior executives. We identify if there's a company has 4 organizational ranks, if they have 10, doesn't matter. I get representatives from each organizational rank,
Sure.
and they sit on the panel and they give input and insights and intelligence. They and it's not necessarily a vote, it's insights and intelligence,
Yep.
because my responsibility as the outsider, as the objective person, is the business alchemist of merging science and art. It's my responsibility to take those inputs, filter them, and then build something systemically that's going to positively affect the company. And so but what I do is I make sure that the people that I select for each organizational level are good verbal communicators and they have a voice within their peer group. So, and we enroll the organization for the first day I engage. I speak to representatives throughout the organization the first day and tell them what's going to happen, because everybody, you bring someone like myself in, and some people are happy, some people are afraid, some people are energized, some people are worried. Is this a clever way of headcount reduction? Is it, am I going to lose my job? All of those things are real, and the way that you fight that and you create a medium for positive growth and evolution is directness, openness, and honesty, and seeking to understand before you understood. Number 5 is 7. And so listen to the people and make sure the organization knows you're listening to the totality of the organization. You're going to take those insights and inputs in and reflect that in the work that we do. And that's the mechanism that I rely on to ensure that we have system-wide embracing of whatever we create.
Fantastic. Yeah, I have a canned question that I always ask after somebody asks me to fix their organization.
What's that?
How long do you want me to take to show you that you're the problem?
Some very often times, what I euphemize it by what are the ceiling points, and
Yep.
very often it's management and it's senior leadership or it's a CEO, or very often it is, and that's why I now I have a team where I have there. So there's 3 levels that we attempt to serve a company that's focusing on organizational development.
Right.
And number 1 is CEO to CEO. I've had the privilege of having over 75 established large corporation one-on-one CEO consultancy relationships in my career.
Good for
So
you.
I'm pretty comfortable talking to anybody about anything.
Yep.
What my CEO consultation practice, which we don't promote because a lot of CEOs don't want to tell people that they have this type of insight from the outside, but I'm not a coach. I help them make the most difficult decisions of their that they're facing that day. And and again, so you don't necessarily promote that. The second level is C-suite. So I have an unbelievably gifted person that is really really special at leadership alignment. And then I have another operational person, who former retired captain of the Navy, who is the operationalized person that ensures that every person in the organization is positively impacted. But we don't go to an engagement and do one or two of those three. We Part of the deal, part of the ticket, part of the process, part of the invoice is, if we don't manage communication points with all three of those audiences, it will never, it might be sold in, it'll never be executed, and it won't positively impact the company. And I've learned that for over time. And therefore, what you outlined, Bill, is it's always somebody or a group of somebody's. So the only way that you ensure that you optimize it is full coverage. And I don't have the patience to manage C-suite. I don't have the patience to manage the rest of the organization. I deal with the CEO, and I have two individuals that are gifted at those other two audiences that are critical to get evolution done.
Yeah, you can't leave it to the chain of command to change the culture. You
They are
have
the
to
culture.
get the informal leaders at every level in every part of the organization to buy into it, and then they become the trim tabs for change. They're that little part of the rudder that is so small, but it turns the Queen Mary,
Right.
and
Yeah.
she would take many more miles to get there.
One of the things that I adopted several years ago was a prenatal approach, prenatal medicine approach to consulting. What does that mean? One of the hardest, worst parts in life is sometimes bad things happen. And before, doctors really didn't talk to people about the bad things that happened. They reacted to it when they happened. And then there was a movement about 15, 20 years ago where very hard conversations were began, so it wouldn't be this titanic blow to someone when bad news happens. And so they talk about all options, not just the good, not just the bad, the all options. Here's what might happen. And and I had that conversation with the senior leadership team, and I determine how they react to that. And I say, here's probably what's going to happen. And some of it's going to be painful, and some of it's going to be on you, and some of it's going to be on her. But this is how we're going to get it done. And if they are receptive to that, then we consider engaging. If they aren't, then I move on, because it's not going to work. And I'm not going to do anything for a fee, just to collect the fee. Yeah, we spend a significant amount of due diligence time making sure there's compatibility and fit in what we see the organization direction should be, and the team of people that need to live it and breathe it and execute it upon operational engagement.
It sounds terrific to me, Mark. I really appreciate this. That's the end of our regular questions. Do you have any questions for me?
So are you the one question that I continue to think about is, are you creating any type of correlation or any type of directional summary for the questions and interviews in totality, or are these living, breathing organisms that live on their own as separate units?
I think that's a great question. Looking ahead, we did this in such a way that it's not going to be a poll. Okay.
Right,
These are open-ended questions. No two people are going to answer these seemingly straightforward questions the same way. But at the end of the day, we'll be able to use AI to grab some correlations out of all of the data and
right,
basically tell us, is there something that is that supports the whole identity culture, or are human beings fundamentally the same, as you and I were saying earlier? They just
right.
express themselves differently in a group. And in many cases, they make their choices not for either livelihood reasons or anything else. Maybe it's just to be accepted or to feel loved or what, all that kind of stuff. We're going to find out what we find out at the end. But I'm amassing a load of information. You're my, I think, 41st interview
Wow,
out
wow.
of 100, and I'm very pleased to have had you here.
Appreciate it.
But I
Thank
think
you.
I really wanted to dive in here and do two things. One is to learn to be a better listener, a better interviewer. That was my selfish goal. And
Mhm.
then the second, to ask better questions, deeper questions that people could really sink their teeth into. And then the other thing is that when folks listen to these played back, because I've got the gamut, I've got every kind of person that you can think of so far, and I can only imagine what we've got left in the next 60.
Sure.
Someone's going to hear somebody who says something that makes a difference in their life right now today. That's my goal.
Right. Yeah, got it. That's good. That's really smart. I like that a lot. That is of noble pursuit.
What else would I do? Well, Mark, thank you again. Anything else to wrap up? Anything you'd like to say about the experience or anything else that's on your mind?
Great questions, great interaction. The best presentation isn't a presentation, it's a conversation. And the way that you craft this and you manage it, we had a conversation. It wasn't an interview. We just had a chat. And as I said, I kind of made that promise to myself and have now selfishly fulfilled the fact that you've helped me think about things in different ways that I haven't thought about before, and I'm a better person for it. So I thank you for
I agree with you, and I thank you right back. It's kind of like, Elon and Joe having a chat, right?
that. Only we didn't include any digital pigs in the conversation. No digital pigs were engaged in this conversation.
Yeah, exactly. But and no F bombs, right?
Right, right.
So
That's it.
with all of that, I'm going to wrap it up, folks at home. We are Simple Questions for 100 People, and I'm Bill Carell. And Mark, it's been my pleasure to have you here, Mr. Mark Allen Stuart. Ladies and gentlemen, have a great day.
Thank you, Bill.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Simple Questions for 100 People, part of the Exvadio Podcast Network. You can find every episode at exvadio.com/podcasts, the Apple Podcast app, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and wherever you find podcasts.